Hello, folks, and welcome back to Appalachian Intelligence. Your host, as always, Justin Kaiser.
Ryan Ratliff.
Welcome back, guys. Welcome back for another episode. We hope you enjoyed the last one. Today, we have a super special treat for y'all. We have a special guest on with us today.
And we're not bullshitting this time, by the way.
Come on.
This guy.
People are going to think you have a famous person on. They're going to look me up and be like, that guy's not fucking famous.
No, he's famous. This guy, let me tell you how famous he is. This is the Dean of the Snow Leopard Wilderness Institute, the Pepper for Your Steak podcaster, the modern day classical composer of EDM, and the curator of the Museum of Weird History. Maverick Mathews, everybody. Maverick, how's it going, buddy?
Dude, you may have given me a better introduction than I've ever given myself.
Good.
I'm sure you've seen a little bit of my work. That's how we found each other. And you could tell, like, that is one thing that happens on every show. I get to the part, they're like, hey, what are you? And I'm like, you motherfuckers. Like, just, that's a really hard crux. And I'm okay with it now because I actually have my own definition. And I want to talk about it a little bit if you're game with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I want to tell you, you just flattered the shit out of me. And I'm going to have to re-listen to that and write that down.
Hey, Maverick, before you build him up too much, he was sitting at lunch today. We worked together and practicing that very thing. So he didn't pull it out of his ass.
I'm flattered because you made me, this is something that my sister-in-law once said to me. I was working on a resume for something. And she goes, did you really fucking do all these things? And I was like, yes, this is completely true. And she goes, you look incredible on paper. You're such an asshole. She wasn't wrong. Like we go through phases where we're not the best people.
Yeah, absolutely. It doesn't always affect the resume though.
Well, but when you strip it of all the emotion and you just write the words down and you're like, whoa, I actually fucking pulled this shit off. That does feel pretty good, but it never feels like it in the time. I worked in Hollywood for a decade and, did some cool shows and stuff, met a lot of A-listers, had a great time, but it never felt glamorous when you were doing it. It felt like you were digging a ditch because you usually were of some kind, unless you're the guy in front of the camera. And I got to be that a handful of times, but
yeah.
Anyway, I just call myself a philosopher now because I love that word. And I'm kind of mentored by the spirit of, and I don't mean that like rock and crystal, like he's right here. I just mean like the spirit of Pythagoras. And he was the guy who coined this phrase. And now to call yourself a philosopher, people go, I don't want to do that because it makes me sound pretentious. But that means that people don't know the meaning of the word.
Yeah.
The word philosopher is philosophia. Philo means love of. Everyone knows that word now because it's constant modern narrative, unfortunately. Why is it that is the thing that's popularized with love of in the Latin phrase? I don't know. That's creepy. I haven't even said it and everybody knows what I'm talking about. So philos means love of, and Sophia is knowledge. Love of knowledge. It's just, that's what we're doing right here, all three of us.
Yeah, absolutely.
And everybody listening and everybody you're going to grow this to. We're all philosophers. So that's the most
that's a good way to put it.
Introduction any guest has ever done.
That is
giving a different product here, people.
I love it, man. I love it. Before we get cranked in here, I mean, we have an awesome topic to get into today. I'm really excited about it. I was really excited about it when, I heard you do it on a previous episode of a podcast that I was listening to. Of course, that's why I reached out to you because, I was hanging on every word that was going on with this certain topic. But before we get into that, why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about yourself, a little bit about what you do other than being a philosopher, of course.
Well, I'm just in love with learning things. Okay. And so like I have some hobbies that have turned into professional pursuits because I just did them for so long and I chipped away at them. And it was really actually not a recommended path because what happens is if you don't focus on one thing and get good at it and then get a revenue stream and build a life around it, then if you work on too many things, you become flooded. And I kind of did that for a while in my 20s and 30s. And then I really hit my stride like when I was like 35, I guess, late. A lot of challenging things, but that had just happened in media and in Hollywood. and I got to work on some really cool projects and shows. I was basically an artist there and like a fixer, a guy who would go do weird, strange jobs on sets and that no one else wanted to do, essentially. Uh, like put boats up in trees or drive trucks from Los Angeles to New York, in 2 days, like right now. Like, can you leave right now? Like, fixing weird problems, just being dynamic. And so I brought that to my podcast, which is called Pepper for Your Steak. And I have a website, maverickmathews.com. And if you want to learn about me, go there. It's a weird experience. It's meant to be avant-garde. Don't take it too seriously. You and I were talking about this the other day. I hate the idea of even being on the internet, but I want to be there as a contribution. And so I am there, but it's reluctant, It's just the times we live in.
Absolutely.
That's my little craft into the matrix.
Well, it's great, man. It's great. And I think, I don't particularly enjoy the whole internet part of it either. I mean, obviously, when we started this podcast, I've been trying to push it in different places and, just to kind of get it out there and get people to step in and listen, just to hear a little different take and a little different side of things that you're not going to hear, in your day-to-day conversations. You're usually not going to hear sitting around the dinner table with your family, and you're most definitely not going to hear it when you turn on your mainstream media and taking in all this garbage that's coming from that all day, every day. But I'm like you in that regard. If I could just meet with each of these people individually and sit down and have these conversations, dude, that's what I would do. That's what I would do.
That is exactly why I went to Hollywood. I talked about how I had a little success there, but the reason I went there was because at the time, and this was kind of true, I perceived there to be a conversation going on there that I wanted to partake in. And it was happening between like Willie Nelson and, all these like fringe people who were having this like, Hunter Thompson and, all these fringe people were having this discussion I wanted to be a part of. And now it's evolved into this.
Yeah.
It's not in Hollywood anymore. And that's why we're here.
Yeah, you're exactly right, man. You are exactly right. That makes a lot of sense.
And I would rather be putting stuff like this out on the internet. But to me, social media is the root of all evil. When it first, Facebook and all that came out, I thought great way to keep up with my old military buddies, friends from high school, but it just turned into basically small town people sticking their nose where it doesn't belong and fighting constantly. I have a Facebook account, but it's only to keep Messenger going so I can message my buddies, and that's it.
It got corrupted like everything else gets corrupted. It actually started out. I don't even know if it started out with good intentions. I think it was just to mine data.
Bingo.
I think it started to mine data,
I believe that it started out as a CIA initiative.
There's evidence for this.
Lockstep.
Yeah. Watch where you're stepping, Maverick.
All you have to do is trace the money, man. All you have to do is trace the money. Just see where the funding came to start all that stuff. Where did he start the company with? That's all you have to do. And we don't want to get too far down this hole because we got a different direction to go in.
We got a really fun direction.
But it's important. It's important. I want to tie this into modern times. It's one of the things I like to do with these history ones, because ultimately people go, why the fuck should I care about the Count of Saint Germain? He lived in the 1700s. Like, who gives a shit? Well, it's because he was involved with all the aristocracy that created all of the history of that entire time. And he was an alchemist. And he was a Renaissance man. And he was like maybe the ultimate human being. Okay. There were monarchs who called him the ultimate philosopher. Like, yeah, so all this shit ties together. Even what's happening now, we're all being manipulated psychologically. That's the war has moved into the mind, and so that's why philosophy has become so important. Is because we have to fall in love with knowledge, because a collection of knowledge leads to wisdom, and a collection of wisdom leads to compassion, and a large collection of compassion leads to love. And that's how we connect again.
That's great.
So fucking read some books, motherfuckers. Okay, here we go. All right. So where do you want to start, man? Did you guys do homework? What's going down?
I looked up as much as I possibly could. I got the background on him, and I got when he was deceased. And I was like, I told Justin, I was like, listen,
Which
man,
guy?
the Count of Saint Germain.
Well, there's
Yeah,
been
but
multiple. You know,
Yeah.
Well, I hope I looked up the right
there
one.
was at least 2 in the 1700s, and like this, one of the books I'm going to read from today, actually talks about. They're like, hey, we want to warn you. There was this other Count of Saint Germain in the 1700s, and he was kind of a criminal, and he gave a lot of the bad reputation stuff to this guy's pedigree. So well, watch out for him, and they talk about him a little bit. But anyway, and then there's the guy from the 1970s.
Yeah.
We probably won't even get to him, but you know. So yeah, I want to hear what you all want to start with. What do you want to get into?
Look, man, I say, well, I mean, this is just me personally, my opinion. I say you just, you know far more about this topic than either of us. So I'm going to let you dictate how we run this, how we
Let's
go.
just start we'll do it classically like a school, but it won't be a TED talk. We'll keep it fun. So feel free to interrupt me. I'm very verbose. I tend to go on these energy rants. Don't be afraid to stop me. So
hey, that's fine.
I'm gonna write down my questions and then I'll ask them later.
No, just ask them when they come up, man. Because then we'll get because I've done this before. I sort of know where I'm going. I just like to keep it fresh, you know.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And I want to get to some new shit that I haven't talked about. Hopefully. So
absolutely.
Okay, so let's give a basic idea of the general character we're going to start talking about, because unfortunately, this man is very complicated. So I mentioned earlier, there was more than one. It turns out a lot of people have used the name, the Count of Saint Germain, you know, from at least 1779 all the way to the present in different forms. So we heard, you know, there's a bunch of internet videos about a guy in the 70s whose story is very fascinating. And then there was another guy in the 1800s in Louisiana, in New Orleans. And then there was another, you know, there's been multiple. And so the interesting thing to do is to try to tie them all together. But I think that's too big a scope to try to cover today. And so let's start with like the basics with the most, there's one character who appears, you know, in like the middle 1700s and disappears like late 1800s, who we have the largest amount of information on from first person sources.
Okay.
So he's the most reliable like character we can evaluate, because I can screen share some pictures of people. We can do whatever here, how we want to do this, but or people can just look it up. You know, I'm going to quote from people's actual diaries and shit.
Okay.
You know, people who are very famous. And this is another thing to take into account. The person we're going to be discussing, it's not like, hey, Frank knew this guy that was 200 years old. Did you know that? We're not talking about Frank. Okay. We're talking about the fucking king of France. And most of the best record that we have was his official mistress, Madame du Pompadour. Okay. Right before the French Revolution, which he was involved in deeply.
Which is a great name right off the bat. Du Pompadour.
Yeah. Oh my God. The names for some of these characters, bro, are, I mean, history's so fascinating because it just becomes the best movie. You can't write a movie this good. You can't do it. It can't be done. We're doing an impression of this when we write movies. So fucking skip the movies. Get rid of that Marvel shit. It's ridiculous.
Just look at history. Just take it all in.
Look at true heroes and stop being told what heroes are. Just look at real ones. Look at real graceful people. This is where I become like the sermon, because I do give a sermon more than I give like a TED talk.
It's all right. It's all right. I love sermons.
Sounds great.
I go to church. I go to church every Sunday.
Okay, so let's talk about that.
He prays for me while he's there.
Pray for me too, man. I probably need the most prayer.
Hey, I have been. I've been praying for both of you guys.
I appreciate it, man. I'm not even particularly religious, but I do believe in the focus of prayer. I think it's completely real.
Absolutely, it is.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about medieval or Europe during these times, 1800s. What you have is not necessarily like super definitive country border lines, although there are obvious borders everyone knows. But within those countries, you have a collection of all these rulers who have people working under them, like serfs and everything, the peons of society. You know, in Italy, they were called the popolo minuto, which means little people, because they were actually diminutive. They were smaller because they had bad nutrition. They were small. They called them the small ones. And like the people who were eating at these feasts, the monarchies, they were like visibly larger, healthier people, you know. And so we're talking about a really strange time in human history where, everybody was constantly battling, but they were doing it through chess. And if you read works like Machiavelli, if my audio gets fucked up because I'm being whatever, tell me. If you read works like Machiavelli, The Prince, when he talks about like, here is how a psychotic would run a country with zero emotional component whatsoever, no heart at all. He's like, murder. Okay, you want to take over the next regime? When you win, you have to murder everybody. Like that's the kind of shit he says in there. Okay, he goes, you murder all the males that are of fighting age. And they're still doing this today. What do you think is happening to the American culture?
Absolutely, that's exactly what's going on.
What's the same model? They're reading Machiavelli.
Yeah.
So like the aristocracy was a class that was so separated from the lower class. Okay. And we're talking about a time when there were just fewer people on the planet. So, these aristocracies, they moved in cliques, just like the wealthy do today. You follow Dan Bilzerian on Instagram, and he's hanging out with Steve Aoki, and he's hanging out with David Goggins, and he's circulating within a small clique of people who are taking themselves pretty fucking seriously. And you can judge their lifestyle all you want, but that has nothing. They're still fucking winning.
Yeah.
They're still worthy of study as an aristocracy. They're a young version of the aristocracy. I don't know what they mean yet. I don't give a shit about them, to be honest with you, but they're still worth studying. Right.
Absolutely.
So the European aristocracy at the time, they moved around the same way. There were these cliques, and you could see the path of this particular guy who shows up basically in France, but we know his whole pedigree, and I'll give that in a second. And he moves through the aristocracy fluidly the whole time. And it's fascinating because when you're part of the aristocracy, there were no public schools back then. You didn't go to, public school at any age. You either had the money for a private tutor, or maybe there was a community group of people who were like, let's teach the kids something. But mostly it was like, you're going to apprentice under whatever your family does or whatever's around you, or God forbid you're an orphan. You're going to be a slave, essentially, and so. But if you're in the aristocracy, you'd have private tutors, and possibly the best in the world, Yeah. And so we're talking about a difference in the potentials for people. So like this dude, the Count of Saint Germain, was accused of doing a lot of magic in front of people. But any technology that you put in front of people who don't understand it is going to be perceived to be magic.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're still doing this today. It's psychological magic because there's a spectrum of intelligence and there's a hierarchy. And this dude, you have to be initiated and ingratiated to the hierarchy. Why? Because they have the libraries.
They have all the knowledge.
Libraries. What does the Vatican have? The largest private library in the world.
Yeah.
Why do you think they're the biggest power structure?
Because they have all the knowledge.
Okay, so who is this guy? According to this particular narrative, he is the son of the last monarch of a small country which has been disappearing and losing ground because all of its leaders basically one by one got picked off, and like it's basically getting absorbed by Austria, and it's called Transylvania.
Boom, already.
I know. And then the plot thickens. Dun, 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 dun. So the Count of Saint Germain's father was named Count Rákóczi. I have no idea how you pronounce that because it was fucking Transylvanian, and I'm not Transylvanian.
Well, it sounded really
good.
So
I just make that up because I'm a fucking eccentric. Okay, I have no fucking idea how you pronounce it.
It was convincing. I was convinced.
Yeah,
I was like, man, he nailed that.
Yeah, well, it sounds good. That's what I fucking. Who gives a shit? This was fucking 300 years ago. We're just trying to figure it out. So, okay, because this man lost the struggle basically to the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Austria and Hungary used to be one thing, and then they broke apart, and so like he separated in this region, and basically this country was absorbed by Austria, and he was his last monarch. Well, because a couple things happened. Because it's very possible that the Count was an illegitimate child, and we don't know his provenance because these actual answers are in private libraries in people's diaries. And we'll never know because the aristocracy doesn't want those secrets to be out there. But this kid shows up, and we know that he had a brother and a sister. And let's see. I'm going to read from this book. And this book is called The Count of Saint Germain. It came out on, let's see, Cooper Oakley Press, and it's a reprint of an original manuscript from 1912. This one went out of print in the 70s. It's out of print now. You can find PDFs of it, but if you really want to know the Count of Saint Germain, this is the book to read. Okay, Cooper Oakley, 1970. And so I'm going to read a part here, okay? Is that cool?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Excuse me. And so this is actually supposedly from his own words. And then we're going to break this down. Okay, it's a quote. Some curiosity may be felt as to its history. I will trace it with the utmost truthfulness, according to his own words, adding any necessary explanation. He told me that he was 88 years of age when he came here, that he was the son of Prince Rákóczi of Transylvania, and that his first wife, Atekeli, by his first wife, he was placed when quite young under the care of the last Duke de Medici, Gian Gaston, who made him sleep while still a child in his own room. When Monsieur de Saint Germain learned that his two brothers, sons of the Princess of Hesse, had become subject to the Emperor Charles VI and had received titles and the names of Saint Carl and Saint Elizabeth. And of course, what that means is his two brothers got titles, but he's an illegitimate child. So he's not going to get a title. He's not going to get a title. So he names himself. He said to himself, very well, I will call myself Sanctus Hermano, the Holy Brother. And that's where the name Saint Germain comes from. It's a spoof title.
That was a question that I had.
Yeah, it's a spoof on aristocracy. He's basically, lampooning aristocracy. I'll be the Holy Brother who didn't get a title. How fucking cool is that?
Yeah, that's pretty. I mean, it's
kid. Like, he's a kid getting a title, and he's like that smart already.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
I mean, it's like Robb Stark declaring himself King of the North. I mean, just like that.
Yeah.
We see how that worked out.
So we know the provenance of this guy. He was the lost heir son, and I don't know if you noticed. I kind of tried to enunciate on this here, but like, did you notice who he was raised by? Because they took him away from his family. Yeah, the Medicis. Let's talk about them for a second. Do you know about the Medicis?
Well, basically,
my forehead
all
looked
the
like a
technology.
fucking lamp.
Well, that's why I don't take the hat off, buddy. You want to talk about? Yeah, well,
I'll look more rocker. Okay, sorry. No, it's because I was reading. Sorry, I'm just being a douche. What were you saying?
Mine's male pattern baldness.
I have receding hairline, so I'm dealing with it. It's we're all fighting the good struggle, man.
Mine's in full retreat.
You got to go Joe Rogan then. You got to just shave that shit off. He's got the good advice.
I just haven't cut my hair, shaved my face in weeks because I've been lazy.
Well, yeah, look at mine. I mean, this is like, I'm like a fucking hermit up here right now. Sorry, we're off the train. Train's off the rails.
Growth.
The Medicis, they brought us most of technology, right?
Not technology, art.
Art.
I mean, they did a lot of technology, but like, so the Medicis were a banking family in Florence. And actually, Gian Gaston was their last heir. This was supposedly when this family was sputtering out, so to speak. And unfortunately, I wanted Gian Gaston, the guy who supposedly raised the Count of Saint Germain, I wanted him to be like the Gaston from the Disney movies. That's where they get that character. Gaston. That's where he comes from. But that's not what this guy was like. He was supposedly like slovenly and gross and like just like a whoremonger, and it's kind of a piece of shit. And the family sputtered out. Like, so what do you expect? Okay. It's not dissimilar to the Borgias. But if you look into that family's peak, the family's peak is what gave us supposedly what we consider to be the greatest works of art in human history. People don't realize Leonardo, Raphael, Botticelli, Donatello all lived in the Medici mansion. Wow. It's not that they made art and those guys bought it. They lived there in order to make it. That's where the David was. I mean, just that's like George Bush having the David, and when he dies, he's like, okay, now y'all can have it as a statue. Like, think about that shit.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so that's the level of aristocracy we're dealing with, and I tell you what's happening in America right now. We'll be political for 2 seconds. You know what they are thinking? They're trying to tiptoe back to that. billionaires like Bezos, they're like, I want that shit back.
Yeah.
Where we have all the
absolutely.
best shit. And y'all get it later.
Yeah, you're exactly
That's
right.
the truth.
You're exactly right. I mean, I don't have a rocket ship that I'm flying into an orbital flight, just in my backyard.
Well, it's not one thing anymore. It's all best things.
Yeah.
And it's ridiculous all best things.
Yeah.
All. That's like being a fucking king. How's that any different than being a king? That's nothing ever. You can literally decide anything. Buy that island. Okay. There's no limits to your experience. And that's where your brain starts going going wonky.
I have more money than I have more.
Well,
money
that's
than
why this is important, man. That's why this is important. This is the reason I bring it up. This was a guy in that position who instead became incredibly graceful and started trying to seed information. So let's jump ahead to what this guy accomplished a little bit. Otherwise, this will be like his whole life's long podcast. But we don't want to do a podcast that long. But what I do want to, it's important to know where people come from, because if the last of the Medici is raising you and they're the people who had the fucking David in their house, they also have a special library.
Yeah.
They also might have access to the elixir of life, which the Count claimed to have at different points. And it's in Madame du Pompadour's fucking journals. It's in so many journals.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Okay, so he was raised by some he was raised by the elites. Substitute any elite that you know, and then you'll understand what this guy went through. It probably, and it mentions in here, I think this is fascinating because I have kids. They make a point of saying, as a child, he was made to sleep in his own room. Because back then, that's not what children did. They slept with their parents. And that has been the norm for most of human history. And the idea that you put them in a cage instead and let them cry it out, that's Satanism.
Yeah.
I mean, and I only use that word because people are familiar with it in terms of our audiences, but you can call it whatever you want. It's an expression of evil to be put your child in a cage and walk away from it. And that's the paradigm that you want to give your child the gift of crib sleep or whatever the fuck it is. And it's a complete lie, man. My kid, he sleeps in bed with us. And the most beautiful thing in the entire universe is waking up next to your child.
Yeah, I agree. My 5-year-old still sleeps with us every single night.
I'm not saying they have to do it forever, but I'm saying when they're very little.
Yeah.
I'm talking very little, And in the very beginning, it's kind of dangerous. You gotta be careful because you're exhausted and they're up every 2 hours and you have to put them somewhere, but it's not in a cage somewhere else. There's a way to make that human. And so they mention that in here. And so we know this guy had, all the challenges of the strangeness of his era, yet he became this incredible, illustrious gentleman who could play the violin, play the piano, could paint, spoke 12 languages, and anyone would test him on this. There's another famous story in here, and this is really resonant with Leonardo, because I think Leonardo has a story like this. They wanted to test him on his physical mastery, and he composed a poem from scratch, okay, with both hands on 2 separate sheets of paper, and so according to the story, they were identical. You couldn't tell them apart. Now, now that's a level of physical mastery most people think is fake, but now I give this to you. Think about how long it takes a baby to learn to walk.
Yeah.
Maybe if you had fucking nothing but spare time on your hands because you were 400 years old, you'd be like, should I learn to write with both hands? Maybe I could jerk off with both hands.
Yeah, man. I mean, this
is a cool mind experiment, man. We have to indulge the idea that this guy may have been a couple hundred years old. The most famous story comes from a woman that he meets over and over, Madame Pompadour. And he sees her in Venice, and he sees her in France, and she manages. I don't think she met. Yeah, no, she didn't. She wasn't part of the revolution. She died. She was the mistress of the monarch before the King of France, who was executed, Louis XVI. Okay. She was the mistress of that. So, but he was best friends with Louis XIV, Louis XV, Louis XVI, and how's that possible?
Yeah, that's
You know, and it's not like we don't have any evidence of him. In the British Museum, they have his compositions of music. In the British Museum, they have letters from him. In the British Museum, they have his book. He wrote a book.
Wow.
It's in the shape of a triangle. And the writing in it is just a kind of weird, esoteric, alchemical poetry. So it's important. Yeah, and you can't even understand what it means. I have a picture of it. You look it up and pull a picture up. It's called the Most Holy Trina Sophia. Oh, there's that word again. Sophia. What's Trina? 3. The most holy, sacred, triangular knowledge.
Wow.
Okay, so let's. I know I'm dropping bombs.
Yeah, this is.
Well, why? What's? Yeah. Okay. So, what part of his life do you want to delve into? Because we don't want to do the whole thing. Obviously, we don't know a lot about his childhood. He was raised by the last of the Medici. He sort of shows up in European courts. Maybe I could read a list of the places he appeared in Europe during his prominent period, which everyone describes the same thing. They all describe the same thing. They say he showed up looking around 40 or 50. He was of medium build, around 5'7". He always wore dark clothing that was covered in diamonds and shoes that had diamonds on them. He always wore dark clothing covered in diamonds. And one of the legends that he would share with people was that when he was studying in India, because when he was young, he went around to all these amazing places and traveled a lot and studied everywhere. You see this narrative with all these great thinkers. He studied Pythagoras. The same thing is true. He traveled a lot. He spent 22 years in Egypt, studying in the temples under the last reign of the pharaohs. Like these people who accumulate crazy knowledge like this, they travel a lot. And so like most of this kid's life was spent traveling and going to like these major tutors that these families could afford to be like, you teach him. Now you teach him. Now you teach him the magic. Now you teach him how to live forever. I mean, like, we don't know. Okay. There's no way to fucking know what he was actually taught. But supposedly he would tell people over and over that when he was in India, for example, the reason he had such exorbitant wealth was because they taught him how to melt diamonds together.
I actually read that. I read that.
You could take diamond dust and turn it into larger diamonds.
Yeah,
there's a very famous story. I'm pretty sure it was Louis XIV. Louis XIV was testing him and gave him a giant diamond, like one of the fucking crown jewels of the country, and it had a flaw in it. And he goes, "Can you take this flaw out?" And he goes, "Yeah." And he took it away. He came back a month later, and Louis weighed it, had all his jewelers look at it and everything, and the flaw was gone, and it had barely reduced in weight.
Perfect.
Like, perfect. But there's like, how are you gonna argue about that story? It's a fucking king of France. It's not Frank. Yo, he came in and he had this diamond. It's the king of France.
Yeah, I agree,
this
man.
Guy was on the world stage. Like people were examining what he was over and over. They didn't know what this guy. Who the fuck is this guy?
Yeah.
All right.
Louis XIV was the longest reigning monarch, right?
They called him the Sun King.
Yeah,
he's
like
actually the longest reigning monarch in
years.
human history. 72 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
The longest reigning monarch in history. Well, whatever you call a monarch, but that's 72 years pretty long. That's a whole life.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's a good life, a long life. And they like, and well, especially he was popular. They called him the Sun King because they like during that period, it's hard to be like, oh, it was a good time. Times back then were not all that good ever. Okay. Okay.
No, you look back on history, almost
you're shitting in the street.
And it's like crap.
It's San Francisco.
It is though. Like people are killing people with fucking swords, and like people are getting murdered for their fucking give me your victuals. I need food. Like like it's just I don't know why I went British there, but no offense.
Yeah.
But
I figured California would be like, dude, give me that food, man.
It's important to put all this in context because it really highlights like the level of this guy whose pieces of art are still in museums. Yeah. Like, how do you rise above that kind of culture? Well, you have to be insulated from it. And you have to be just, it's just like all these celebrities. They don't just date fucking. They have their own dating apps and shit, I don't know if people know that. Like, there's private dating apps you have to apply to, and you have to prove you're a celebrity. There's levels of aristocracy that get weird. They only want to circulate with themselves.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing about the Count was that he really tried to contribute things to society. So the one thing he did during like the majority of his life after he got all his education was he came back to Europe and he started traveling around and meeting all the other alchemists of the time. And one of the main things that the Count of Saint Germain is remembered as is an alchemist. And a lot of people don't even know what that word means. And it's just it's an older word that meant like a master of the sciences. That's all it really means. And you know, that's not, obviously he was into every kind of knowledge, but he's very famous as an alchemist because the alchemy during the day was still trying to turn lead into gold, which I do believe actually may be possible, and under certain conditions, and so do others. And
I believe he did it in a video in 1972.
Well, that's, I mean, video is always questionable, right? But like, I think certain things all of a sudden create like crazy wealth. Like when the Templars came back from being under the Temple of Solomon, we don't know what exactly it is that they brought back, but one of the ideas is that they may have brought back knowledge, a sacred kind of knowledge to do alchemical things. And then all of a sudden the Templars start dominating Europe, and the Vatican goes, you know, we have to fucking crucify these dudes, and that's where fucking Friday the 13th.
Friday the 13th, absolutely
right. So, but like but one of the main things about the Templars is we don't know what that secret that they got under the Temple of Solomon was. Like there was a secret knowledge they got, and it made them extremely wealthy. Maybe it was fractional reserve banking. I don't know. But
whatever it was.
But this guy had a secret wealth, and everybody used to talk about it constantly because he was with the richest people, and he just did nothing but travel. And his clothes literally had diamonds on them.
Yeah. The first rhinestone cowboy.
Yeah.
I mean, literally. They're doing an impression of this guy and people of this era where they would just have like, you know what? Hey, take those jewels and just put them on my clothes. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, man.
Holy crap.
Like, why do I need a ring? Just put them all over me. I mean, it's Liberace shit, dude. I love it. But they were so, it really is. Okay, let's get back to business. All right, some serious contributions. Let's read some shit here. Okay. Did I leave off somewhere? A loop? Did I? There's a loop I leave open? Did I not close a loop on anything we talked about?
No, I don't think so. I think you were just heading into what you're heading into right now. I think we're good.
Yeah, what the fuck did he do? Why is he important? What did he contribute?
We were talking about alchemy.
Yeah, right. Thank you. Alchemy. Okay. A lot of stories of him doing weird tricks in front of people to convince them that he was indeed legit. And so these would have been in small sitting rooms with the aristocracy, people having brandy and shit, you know, smoking cigars, books everywhere. I mean, I want to be in these fucking rooms. Sounds awesome. People dressed in diamonds. Like, what the fuck is going on? Okay.
Sounds like a good
Jesus
time.
Christ. Even every time I tell these fucking stories, I'm like, God damn it, what are we doing? Where are my diamonds? Rupert, bring my diamonds. I'll be able to say that one day. Okay, not for real, but I'll pay Rupert well in diamonds.
Just paste them right here on my shirt.
Let's talk about some of these tricks he did. Okay, so there's one thing he did in front of Louis XIV. I talked about the diamond. Another one was he would produce a piece of this is one famous incident. He called it I don't want to say unburnable. What's the other word? Unignitable wood. It couldn't be lit on fire, but it was wood. And everyone's like, is it wood? We don't know. But supposedly when you lit it, instead of burning, it would swell up and then immediately turn to ashes.
What?
It's just I have no idea, man. These are just the famous stories that are told about him. I'm trying to do the weird, rare ones that you're not going to see like on the internet. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because nobody wants to read that shit over and over. And obviously I can't even begin to scratch the surface with this guy. Let's talk about basics, how he functioned. Never ate a single meal in front of anyone. When he showed up to the aristocracy court, he was 40 or 50. And he spent at least 80 years in the French aristocracy on record, and was also on record saying, I'm several hundred years old and I'm very tired, so I'm going to go rest in Nepal for about 80 years, and you won't hear from me for about 80 years. Right before he vanished.
So like a curtain call. See you guys in 100 years. I'm out.
But like, okay, so let's see. I've been in Nepal. Like, what's in Nepal? Why would he mention Nepal? Because there is a story in Nepal, a sacred scripture, if you will, in a lot of their sacred texts that talk about these places called Bayul, which are Xanadu. It's like a paradise hidden in the Himalaya. Now, if you've been in the Himalaya, those mountains are fucking ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, like, and you, there could be something hidden there. They can't even fly planes there. We don't know what's there. It's not like they can just do an aerial survey. Okay, there's always cloudy. You know, you can't get close. Shit gets destroyed. They can't fly helicopters in there. They can't fly planes. You know, if you want to get to the Everest base camp, you have to make. You know, they can't. They fly this fucking puddle jumper over there. This like 8-seater airplane, and you're like, what? Don't you guys have bigger planes? Like, why don't we? And they're like, the weather's bad. We're not going today. And I'm like, yeah, we're not. You know, they crash all the time. So we're talking about a part of the world that's still pretty cool and isolated. And back then in the 1700s, you know, anything's possible. So, and there's multiple characters throughout history who talk about these places, these Xanadus, these mythical rejuvenation energy centers high up in the mountains. Even the Tibetans have it in their language. The Tibetans talk about it. Everyone up there talks about it spiritually. They're like, yeah, these are these secret hidden places. They may not be on the same energy plane.
Wow.
I don't even know what that means.
No, me neither.
You could just, so like it could be a cave entrance and then you go into another energy field where like you're being recharged and it's paradise. That seems outside the realm of human possibility and some very rock and crystally Sedona type shit. But like, I've seen weird things in this world that blow my mind. Don't you think there should be a crescendo kind of event if that's what human nature is? It's a scale.
Yeah.
Just like, and I don't even think it's that weird that this dude can live a long time, because I actually believe human beings live on a spectrum. Some of them don't live very long at all. And because that's true, the opposite has to be true. What if some of them live a couple hundred years? It's talked about in every major book. The Bible, Noah's 600.
Absolutely. Well, Methuselah was what, 974 years old?
These are just outliers.
Something?
They're just outliers. They're just outliers.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
I think this guy was a true outlier. But that's how his story kind of crescendos, not to be a spoiler alert, because guess what? It starts up again 80 years later as a new guy, because he just changes his name maybe and goes to another part of the world where nobody recognizes him and then fakes his death.
I think his name is Elon Musk now.
No, because you know why? Elon Musk doesn't act with any grace and he doesn't have moxie. Everybody writes about this guy in their journal. These were the mistresses of the kings of the world, and they're infatuated with a guy wearing fucking diamonds. Okay. So they're writing about him in their diaries like, oh, he's so witty and he speaks his languages and my god, it's obvious that he hid his dalliance as well, but it's also obvious that all these women were ravenous for him,
just infatuated with this guy.
Well, not only that, I think he had a lot of like relationships that he did a good job hiding, and he didn't manage to piss anybody off because it did it so gracefully.
Yeah,
he might have been the most graceful person in history. He's wearing diamonds. I can't get enough of that.
Yeah, his clothes are covered in diamonds.
Well, just imagine if you learn to melt diamonds together, you can make money out of nothing, out of dust, out of diamond dust.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, you could take 2 diamonds that were like half the price and then combine them into one that's exorbitant. You would have an unlimited amount of money. But then he joins, he was in the Freemasonic Lodge, which was responsible for orchestrating the French Revolution. He's on the lists. His name's signed there. And yet, there are journal articles, from Madame Pompadour, where she's talking about how he's counseling the king and trying to get him to prevent revolution.
So it's kind of like he's playing both sides of the coin.
He always does this throughout history. But the contribution is usually him pleading and trying to get the good side. He does this in England. He does this in Russia. He does this in France multiple times. And it's very possible he was in Germany in 1776 when Adam Weishaupt was reviving the Bavarian version of the Illuminati.
Wow.
This guy's story goes so deep, we could do 20 fucking hours. I'm giving you the highlights.
Yeah, dude. And that's the thing. Just me reading through, just checking things out here and there. Of course, I listened to you talk about him a little bit before, and then just in the studying that I've done on it, you're exactly right. I mean, there's so much there, and when you think, okay, that's all that's left here to unpack of this guy. No, there's something else. And then it keeps popping back up. I mean, it's unreal. And how many different aliases and
Yeah, he assumed a different name everywhere he went, and then he produced credentials backing up that name to that aristocracy. There's a story of him doing it in Russia and taking out this thing and being like, yeah, I'm the Graf Tsarkozy, and I'm the guy who's like this. He was a Russian general, and he produces like all this information, and then he's living with all these famous artists, and then he's hanging out with the mistresses of all the guys, of course, and getting invited to the best parties. But when he goes to these parties, he's never, ever in his life recorded eating or drinking. He didn't eat in front of anyone ever. And supposedly I read some sources that say his meals were taken to his room and they were of simple fare. That's the best description I could get out of any of the sources. And I've gone through pretty much the ones that aren't in private libraries. I can't, there's no more for me to go to.
I think that I read the only food substance that I read that people had documented seeing him eat was a form of oatmeal. Is how
basic
they
gruel.
It. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, and that makes sense that there's a gruel back then. That's certainly not the most nutrient efficient way to live. And I'm a carnivore, and I have a podcast called Pepper for Your Steak. And I don't know if I'm gonna live to fucking 300, but maybe it's because, it's interesting. Pythagoras actually lectures on this. Pythagoras lectures on this at length. Yeah, he has several books that we know these books exist because people like Socrates talk about them, but they're not anywhere than the Vatican Library. But we know they exist, so we know their content and their premises. And the idea is, and this is where the majority of people think Pythagoras was vegetarian. Pythagoras, no, he fucking wasn't. Okay, I'm going to lecture on Pythagoras just for a minute here as a teaser, because he ties into the Count, because I think they may have been the same incarnation. Because fucking, unfortunately, the Count of Saint Germain went around telling people, I am a reincarnation of this list, and he gave people a list: this person, this person, this person, this person, this person, this person. And Pythagoras could also do this. He knew each one of his incarnations. People in the old world took this stuff so seriously, and guess what? They still pick the Dalai Lama to this day this way.
Yeah.
By making him identify. They have their little tricks that they use to test you, to see if you're the reincarnation. They go, which one of these was your brush? And they'll have 5 brushes, identical brushes. Which one of these is your this? What was your favorite book from the bookshelf over there? Go pick it out. How many of those things can you fake?
Yeah.
Fucking none of them.
You can't fake any of that. I mean, you got to be the luckiest.
Yeah, you're going to walk over to a bookshelf of 300 books and pick the right book? I mean, like, I'm sorry, these people aren't stupid. They've been studying spirituality for fucking millions of years, thousands of years, millions, maybe millions. I don't know. But, okay, so I forgot what okay, how did I get on the Pythagoras tangent? It was because, let's reverse engineer.
Meat eater.
Because Saint Germain was,
thank you. So Pythagoras lectured at length on not harming specific animals, which he believed human spirits could incarnate into. So during his life, it was very common, a common form. These kinds of facts about Europe, not even Europe. This was like Italy and Syria, 600 years before zero. So 2,600 years ago. People were trying to predict the future. The most common form of divination was to take an animal, sacrifice it, and look at its organs.
Yeah.
So Pythagoras was like, we don't need to use dead animals to predict the future. We can use math. That's why he's famous. Okay? And so they're like, he's a vegetarian. It's fucking ridiculous.
No,
I'm not making this up.
No more animal sacrifice to predict the future.
So he was like, look, we can still make the correct sacrifices. He had later in life, he had his own college and they still made sacrifices every day. He was like, but we're only going to sacrifice specific animals because specific animals can receive a human soul as a reincarnation, and we're not going to sacrifice those. Anything that was albino, for example, a white chicken, a white peacock, fucking anything that was out of the ordinary. Like those are aberrant. That's aberrant behavior genetically, right? So he's like, there's a reason that happened. Is because fucking human incarnated into it. That's nuts to think about.
It is. It really is.
But what if that's fucking true, man?
That is.
We're
crazy.
talking about the guy who, like, one of our most famous thinkers 2,600 years ago. Everyone knows that name. No one knows anything about what he taught. But it got condensed into the Bible 600 years later. Like, every doctrine Jesus ever taught came from Pythagoras. Because Jesus was in Essene, and the Essenes were a school formed to teach the Abrahamic sect the teachings of Pythagoras.
Yeah.
That's the truth.
Yep.
So we have this guy, Count of Saint Germain, whose book was a triangle, and Pythagoras' whole deal was the sacred trinity is a mother, a father, and a child. That's the sacred trinity, according to Pythagoras. That's what he taught. And it obviously got perverted by Christian doctrine, right? Just Maverick talking. Mother, father, child. Okay. And then Count of Saint Germain's book is the most holy Trina Sophia, the sacred triangle. And it's poetry about love. But it's supposed to be alchemical secrets written in code. Maybe the elixir of life.
That's insane, dude. I mean, there's just so many connections.
Are y'all enjoying this, or is this like too wacky out there?
No, it's blowing my mind.
That's great. This is great.
Okay.
Look, we like to get as
it's hard for me to know how my
possible.
work comes across, man. I have a very eccentric product, so
no, I'm loving it. I'm loving it. These are the kind of conversations that I love, that we love, that we have on a day-to-day basis. I mean, we're working, we sit down at break, and it's like, dude, did you hear, or did you see, or did you know? And I mean, it's just, it opens up an entire can of endless possibility and conversation.
Philosophy is the ultimate set of Legos in your mind.
That's a good way to put it.
And like, you didn't get any directions. And you have to put some of it together for different purposes immediately. Language, walking. Like, put that shit together right now, or you're behind.
Yeah.
It's fucking nuts.
It is.
And then you realize, oh, there's books. I can read books. There are instructions. There's instructions. Fuck, they told me there weren't any. Why? Because they want you to be chaotic and not get anything done and just fucking pay taxes and be a slave.
They want you to be stupid, like you said earlier.
Do you think fucking any of the Medici wanted the Popolo Minuto to get in their way and try to become aristocracy? No, they'll just remove his funding. Get this guy out of here.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Sorry, I cut you off there. What were you gonna say?
I don't remember, but I did bring up, or I just did think of something. We were talking about all these women that were
associated with this guy,
mistresses of these the most high authority at the time.
Yes.
I believe that I read somewhere or heard from somewhere that the famous Casanova himself.
Yes, they interacted.
That's what I was thinking, that he either met this guy or he talked at length about this guy.
So I went
something
to Venice
along those lines
with my mother in 2000, and I think it was 18, when she was dying of cancer. Her biggest wish was to go tour Europe. So we spent a month touring Europe. And I've been to Europe before, but not as an adult. I was like in my 20s, and I had a great time. I really love Europe. I spent a lot of time there. I was just dating a girl from Germany, and it was amazing. But going to Venice, for some reason, it made a really great impression on me. There's something about that place. I mean, it's a fucking city that's invented. Everything's on poles. It's in the middle of a fucking bay.
Yeah.
It's essentially floating, but not. It's just in a shallow bay. And so much crazy history. So many famous, the most famous humans in all of history have walked through that plaza, and been on those streets. And Casanova, I just developed a kind of infatuation with. In fact, I wanted to name my son Casanova, but it got shot down early. So he got named Hunter instead of after Hunter Thompson. So which is it? But Casanova's story in itself is worth study.
Yeah,
we're talking about a guy who's the most famous lover of all time. Like, it's been a couple hundred years, man. We still talk about this guy. Like, what the fuck was he up to? You know, and his story's nuts. He was just like a Lothario. He was just cruising around, and he had the magic language. He was the Warren Beatty of the era. I don't know if you know his story, but like it's pretty famous. Jack Nicholson, pretty famous. These are, you know, right now. Who else? Who's one right now? Who's a Casanova right now? Leonardo DiCaprio.
Leonardo. That's exactly what I was
Google the
say.
women he's dated.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to be male centric. I just mean like there are these guys who George Clooney, probably the most graceful. You know?
Yeah, I agree.
But you don't hear trash about these guys in the fucking. You don't hear trash about Leonardo DiCaprio in the tabloids. You don't hear. No. You know, it's not like he's getting drunk, pissing on women, hitting people. The guy's acting like a fucking gentleman. Yeah. And so I have no qualms about the way that this guy has chosen to live his life. See, and that's what Casanova did. That's what the Count did. They were the Leonardo DiCaprios of their time, wearing clothing made of diamonds.
Yeah. Diamond.
Imagine Leonardo. Imagine if fucking George Clooney walked in. I fucking sold my tequila company for $750 million. Diamond clothes. But he would just be like, all right, or however the fuck he acts. I mean, they're no different, man.
No, you're right.
And I would never compare them to people like Jeff Bezos. I would never compare them to people like that because that guy's like, I don't want to fault him, but he's just vanilla. He's not striving to be a gentleman.
Yeah, it's one of those things like
it's a matter of class and
absolutely,
grace.
Absolutely.
And
grace
discipline.
is the big thing there. And I think with grace, that ties hand in hand with charity, you know, to be charitable, to want to leave something, some kind of.
But you're even being charitable with your appearance by dressing nice for others.
Yeah.
Not to be fancy, to look nice.
Absolutely. I agree with that.
That's fucking fascinating. And I always pushed against this. People, when they're young, they always push against this. Like, I don't need a fucking penguin suit. You know, like, it just looks dumb. Who cares? And they're not wrong, but you could just do it your way.
Yeah.
Do it your way. But, like, it's the reason that whole trope exists at all. The clothing trope as a archetype of visual display. I mean, it's the fucking peacock, right? And you can take it in so many different directions, but we know which peacocks are trashy. And we know which peacocks are graceful.
Yeah.
And you don't have to say words. This is something I talk about with modern art because I fucking hate modern art because I think it's mostly a medium of exchange for money laundering and bullshit. If you have to explain a piece of art, it's not art.
I agree.
Exactly.
Real art doesn't need an explanation. You look at it and feel something immediately in the core of your being. And everybody who writes about this guy said that he has a kind of charisma that when he was there with you in the room, it felt different. I believe this is something we can all cultivate. And this is how we take our fun, goofy podcast and think about it in our individual lives in an actionable way. Charisma is real. Marilyn Monroe used to talk about it all the time. There's a really famous story about Marilyn Monroe being on the streets of New York with her photographer, and nobody was recognizing her. She had just kind of dressed down, and this is at the height of her fame. No one was recognizing her. It was blowing her photographer away. She's like, what the fuck? And she goes, oh, do you want to see her? And he goes, what? He goes, do you want to see Marilyn? And he goes, yeah. And she just took a pose and they had to have the police get them out of there. They had to be escorted away by the cops.
She got mobbed.
She could turn it on and off like a light switch.
Yeah. I mean,
and unfortunately, she was the trope of the modern courtesan. You know, we know what happened to her sad story. It's heartbreaking.
Yeah, it is.
But the Count was one of these people who knew how to turn that on. And then in case it didn't turn on, I'm not going to say it again. You know what I'm going to say.
Just put fucking diamonds on your clothes. That's
all you got to do.
It's hard not to be graceful wearing diamonds. It's
Let's see.
I'm with you.
So where should we go with this? What do you guys want to know about? Tell me stuff that came up with, and if just in your tiny cursory research or anything that I mentioned you're interested in, or like
all the songs,
anything.
And by the way, the songs he did in English kind of explain where Casanova was going with this. The Maid That's Made for Love and Me. Jove, When He Saw My Fanny's Face. It's Not That I Love You Less. So apparently that was his side chick. And gentle love, this hour befriend me. Like, by the way, he wrote 4 English songs, 7 violin solos, 6 trio sonatas, 42 Italian arias.
Most of that's in the British Museum.
This guy is, the more we look into him, he's blowing my mind here.
Well, it's hard to even imagine a human being like this. Like, how much would you fucking give to hang out with this guy? I would cut a finger off.
Yeah.
Like, what kind of human experiences can you have? And then when you become that person, imagine how attractive that is. Just imagine.
Absolutely. You could use it in any situation that you're ever in, ever.
So imagine this is the Maryland thing. You have managed to craft a persona which is so attractive, it gives you ultimate power.
Yeah.
We should all be trying to do this.
We should.
Just for the sake of benefiting the human race, to better everyone. And the fact that it's not a narrative is not a mistake. It's intentional. It's fluoride. It's fucking soy. It's everything. Okay, we know that I'm so fucking tired of even talking about it all.
Yeah.
It's obvious. These aristocracies never went away. Do you think they want to stop wearing clothes like that? I don't think so.
No. They're not going to quit wearing their diamond clothes. You kidding me?
So it is fucking awesome. Something struck me in just what you just said, though. Hold on. What was it? I may have forgotten it already, but anyway. Yeah, so we can go in any direction you want with this. I could read some more quotes, or I could just tell some more stories, or well,
this guy, I don't know.
We could talk about we could talk about the other incarnations, which are interesting. The guy from the 70s is pretty interesting, because what's mostly interesting about him is his death is very mysterious. And then the guy in New Orleans, but New Orleans is its own episode completely, because that place is.
Yeah, New Orleans there's just a different kind of energy there. I mean, it's with everything, but I'm thinking it might have been the New Orleans incarnation of this guy. Was that the early 1900s, like 1902?
Might have been 1800s.
Okay. I can't remember if I read or if I heard, like, I've tried to pour as much time into this guy in the last couple days, but wasn't there some kind of actual police documentation? I'm thinking, like you said, either the late 1800s or early 1900s, to where there was some kind of party or something that he was hosting.
Yeah. So like basically these folks show up in New Orleans. He's calling himself the Count. They're very lavish. They have tons of money. Everything fits the same description. And he starts throwing parties to basically ingratiate himself to the local gentry, the people who sort of run New Orleans, the Southern, whatever you want to call them, aristocrats. And so basically the way that you do that is you host lavish parties. We all saw Great Gatsby.
Yeah.
If you want to circle around you, the richest people, in any clique, you just have parties and they come. I've circulated in a few of these in Hollywood, not any crazy ones, but like that's how you meet people, because you want them to come to your party so you can meet them. It's like a social thing. It's not like you go, hey, Jack Nicholson, let's have lunch. Like, I don't fucking know you. But if he comes to a party you have and there's other people there so that you're verified by the aristocracy, then you're like, oh, I feel normal being here. I can ingratiate myself to this person. So the Count's doing that in New Orleans. And then some weird shit happened. And I don't know the details of that because they're not very well preserved. And this is why he gets, like, at different points. Here's the thing. We haven't even touched on this. I did a 2-hour podcast, Rima Faye's podcast. I can't remember the name of it, but it's out of Australia. Her name's Rima Faye, though, if you want to go check it out. Another podcast on the Count. And she's doing a brand new show, too. She's going to be just as successful as you guys. You guys are both approaching it the same way. Very different podcasts. Her podcast was all about the possibility that this guy was a vampire.
Yeah.
And we haven't even touched on that.
Well, as soon as you said Transylvania and Dracosi, I was like, that's pretty close to Dracula. I see where we're going here. But I'm glad you veered away and went into the actual historical part of it, because, listen, one of my favorite mythology, all that stuff, I am fascinated to learn about it, read about it, listen to things on it, ghosts and all that. I do not believe in one single hint of that stuff. Now,
What stuff specifically?
paranormal,
Vampires?
cryptos, things like. I do want Sasquatch to be real, by the way. But
Well, Jane Goodall, the number one primate, scientist in history, believed that at one time that, and now we already have the archaeological records in Asia of Gigantopithecus. So we already know that it's real. We know that there was a land bridge from Asia to North America. So it's not a question of whether or not it's real. It's a question of like, where's the evidence? Has it been absconded with by the Smithsonian? Very, very likely. Are they an arm of the Vatican to enforce the doctrine that all humans were created like in one format forever? Absolutely. Although now there's like 38 different human species, from Homo florensis, which is like a miniature person, to giants. So it's not a question of whether Bigfoot existed. It's like, when do they stop existing, or do they still? Because we have evidence of one for 100,000 years ago that was, 15, 18 feet tall, giant monkey. But then
it would have had to have evolved, though, because I went over this with Justin and my dad, because they were hominid, whereas bipedal beings such as us with family structures are hominin. Gigantopithecus was not bipedal.
What do you mean? It used its arms?
Yes.
They weren't big. They weren't long enough. Look at the picture of that thing. You think it crawled like an ape, you mean?
Yes.
But I don't care how Bigfoot walks, but like over 100,000 years of evolution, didn't we learn to walk?
Yes, and that's the thing I was saying. It would have to have evolved specifically for that purpose.
Yeah. Now we're on to Bigfoot from the Count of St. Germain. I can loop this back in.
And
that's okay, though, because all these things, Matt, like they all tie together in a certain way, because we're exploring what human beings believe is possible in their reality. And my whole argument is that something has been hidden from us in terms of our possibilities intentionally. Sam talks a lot about this, Sam Tripoli. If we don't know how special we are, we can't leverage it. What if we could all live to 300 years simply by not drinking any alcohol, or combining alcohol with the fluoride in the water, or combining alcohol with the fluoride in the water and one other thing? That's the premise of that very first Batman movie, is that none of the products the Joker was putting out by themselves were poisonous, but when you combine them, they were deadly. And that's what's happening in our society.
Yeah.
People pretend every day that's not, and I don't know that if you only eat gruel, to the sacrifice thing, but Pythagoras lectured specifically at length on what sort of diet you should have based on what you were trying to achieve. And he believed that if your ultimate goal was to be a warrior or an athlete, you should have a diet mostly of meat. But if your ultimate goal was to be a deep thinking, calm philosopher, you should shy away from those things because they inflame the passions. And what do we learn now? Cholesterol is a precursor to testosterone.
Yep. That's true.
So a vegetarian diet does make you more docile. Look at all of Asia. Why do you think those people are so easy to dominate? They have bad nutrition and no testosterone. They're not carnivores like fucking Joe Rogan, not beasts.
Yeah.
That's just diet. So it is possible that you could prolong your life by having an extreme one. And then there's all the science that has come out lately about just exchanging of blood. How you can take the blood out of a young rat, put it into an old rat, and that rat digresses in age. And in every species, this is true. What does that mean for humans? Like, what if you can take a young person's blood and just put it in an old person? That's not fake. That's real.
Well, all throughout history, you've had, human sacrifice and cannibalism.
We're obsessed with this idea. Yeah.
Yeah. It's always, all throughout history, you see this power being received from the person either partaking in this event. Look at Vlad the Impaler, look at Elizabeth Bathory, look at well, Hillary Clinton today, she's never going to die because she's drinking baby blood every single day.
Queen of England. The stories about the Queen of England disappearing people.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I heard that she keeps a vial of blood around her neck or somewhere on her person at all times. So,
I mean, what if you just had to drink it and you would get like the nutrients in it? And if it was from a young person, you would have young. Here's what people don't understand about eating meat. And I listened to a scientist explain this, and I was like, that makes so much fucking sense. Why do we eat in the first place? I'm asking you.
Fuel, nutrition, keep our bodies going.
What does fuel mean? What's our body doing?
It's breaking down the different types of fats, the salts, the proteins.
Just on a basic level, though. On a basic level, what's it doing? It's regenerating itself.
Regenerating
right?
itself. Yeah.
It has to replace all these cells. Every 7 years, supposedly, is how long it takes you to replace every cell in your body, if you know what we're told is true. So, it has to regenerate itself, and then it has to essentially burn energy. A calorie is a measurement of energy. Essentially, it has to burn calories, and then it has to take whatever it's eating and turn it into the building blocks to create all the things that you are. It has to regenerate them. So if you eat something very similar to what you are, red meat, for example, from like a healthy animal, like a deer or something, right? It's going to take that meat apart and make more meat with it. Do you understand?
Yeah.
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 You're not made of vegetables. You're made of meat.
That's true.
So your body has to change that shit into something else. It's fucking basic. And I'm not like a aggressive carnivore. I don't give a shit what people eat. But I don't have a horse in the race. That's the thing. I went down the nutritional path because my dad died in front of me when I was 10, and it was because of heart disease. And I wanted to know what real fucking nutrition was and where the lies were. He was a doctor. He had access to all the best information at the time, right? But it was all wrong. The food pyramid was a sham. They were pushing soy. Like, it was a disaster. Your endocrine system just gets destroyed. None of that has anything to do with heart disease anyway. It's mostly due to dehydration, turns out, because the cells in your blood vessels bump into the walls. And after time, you're fucking consistently dehydrated your whole life. They start ripping holes in them.
Yeah.
What a concept. And it's pressure. What's blood pressure? Well, those cells are really banging into the walls. That comes from stress. All these things, it sounds like we're on crazy tangents, but we're talking about prolonging life. What did this guy do? How did he do it?
Yeah. I mean, you're talking about a guy, like you said, it was this gruel, could have been some magical elixir he fucking made out of who knows what. Exactly. People eat gold. You know what monatomic gold is? I take it.
Oh, you know what? I've actually heard of this. People eating gold.
It's called monatomic gold. Do your deep dive on it. Do your homework. It's like colloidal silver. Heard about that? You know what colloidal silver is?
Yeah.
It's an antiseptic.
Yep. And
some people get nuts. And there was that dude who drank so much he turned blue and died. I'm sorry to laugh. That's horrible. But he did. He turned blue.
He did that. Okay. Nobody forced him.
Yeah, but it's wrong for me to laugh. You never laugh at another person's suffering. That's just a little child who didn't know any better and nobody fucking taught him right. And then he just fucked up. That's how everybody is.
I think most people turn blue when they die anyway.
No. He turned blue and lived as a blue person for like several years and would do interviews and stuff. Do you remember him? Do you remember this guy?
I do.
He's like, they were in Vegas.
Like, I'm gonna live forever. I'm made of silver. I don't think so.
Well, there's a whole group of them in Vegas now, but
what?
Yeah,
the Blue Man group.
Oh, da. You got me. I walked right into that one, and I've been to that show. Jesus.
But no, I think you're right, man. It sounds like we're going off on all these weird tangents, but you're talking about a guy. Yeah, you're talking about a guy that maybe possibly lived hundreds of years. So the key is
maybe possibly this one dude. It is on record that he lived probably around 200 years. Like, he showed up at 50. He was in court for 80 years, and then he was hanging around Europe for another 20 or 30. Yeah, and then he disappeared in Nepal. Like, it's in country. You can't argue with it. There's documents that we have his fucking music.
Yeah,
we have his paintings.
Yeah. That's true. He was there.
God, I wish we had his fucking clothes. I was just Liberace may have had his clothes. Maybe Liberace got his clothes.
Maybe that was Liberace.
Wouldn't that be something? And it's not outside the realm of possibility, except Liberace died of AIDS, sadly.
Or is that what he wanted you to think?
Maybe he faked it. But I don't think the Count of Saint Germain would have gotten all his lovers to get like plastic surgery to look like him because he is so obsessed with his own looks.
Yeah.
That movie, Behind the Candelabra, by the way, is one of the fucking best movies on the planet. And Michael Douglas is stupid good. So is Matt Damon, but
he's just in the crypto commercials now.
I got so obsessed with that fucking movie for a while because I think it's a piece of it's fun. I think to me it's a lot of unintentional comedy. It's dark unintentional comedy. Mostly listen to Joey Diaz talk about it. Be like, imagine waking up with that guy. Imagine waking up with that guy sucking your pipe.
You got 5 minutes to quit that. That's
oh my god, dude, it's so funny. But listen, these guys, these characters, they do like the reason I bring up Liberace and we indulge in this goof with him is that like it does matter. Like he didn't act super gracefully. He acted like a human being, and he partied and he had a good time. And God bless him for that. I'm not judging the guy. Would I choose to live that experience? I don't know, but maybe if it was that or nothing. Yeah. Maybe I'll fucking try it out. I don't give a shit. But what I'm saying, I don't mean now, but I'm saying like, hey, Liberace, take it easy. But what I'm saying is like, incarnation's a weird thing, man. We don't get to pick it. And what you do get to pick is how graceful you act. And the thing that I'm trying to cultivate in my own life, and the idea that it's just so, it even sounds pretentious to say you're trying to do this now. That's how unusual it's become in our society. It's like, I want to be graceful. I want to act in a way that makes people feel value when I walk in the room. Not because of my clothes,
That would help, though. Diamonds on the clothes would totally help.
Well, I just think it's, that's an expression of what they were into at the time. That's when people are peacocking at a level that were so funny. That's when those fucking masks were invented. Like, let's think of the craziest shit we can do. Like, I mean, the aristocracy in Europe during this period was probably the best human experience you might be able to have, with the exception of like the syphilis and all that. And the lack of medical care, because unfortunately they were getting punished for that kind of shit. Yeah, and but the debauchery was real, man. I remember a story of the Borgias, which I only bring them up because they're similar to the Medici, and so it paints a picture of like what these people were up to. The Borgias are famous for one particular incident attended by the senior members of their family, which may or may not have been incestual, father, daughter, and a husband. Very creepy, but it's called the Feast of the Chestnuts. Feast of the Chestnuts. And what they did was they had all these chestnuts strewn across this grand ballroom, and they had like a box built for themselves overlooking it, right? And they had all these chestnuts strewn on the ballroom. And then they brought in all these naked prostitutes, and they had the prostitutes crawl around gathering the chestnuts. And then they brought in the noblemen, who were judged according to how many women they could bone and how quickly they could go from woman to woman, and like their general performance, what kind of sex they had. That's a true story. Feast of the Chestnuts. I mean, these people, they got imaginative.
That's debauchery at its highest level.
Well, everything that what's his name? And this fits right into the theme of what you guys are trying to explore. What's his name? Kubrick. Eyes Wide Shut. It's not fake. It's not fake. I think they whacked him. And they didn't even release the edit that he made. They edited that movie. There's a Christmas tree in every scene. There is a lit Christmas tree in every shot of that movie. That's a little Easter egg for you.
I'm going to have to go back and watch that movie.
I know. Now you're like, is that true? It might just be a lit display, but I'm pretty sure it's a Christmas tree in every single shot. There's so much symbology in that movie. It's insane.
Well, Kubrick, he gets tied to so much anyway. I mean, it's
of course, but like what he did was to dip his toes into the aristocracy.
Yeah, that's true.
And then he wanted to expose it as an artist. And instead, this guy was a guy who was cruising around Europe trying to seed knowledge into other alchemists and into the right hands so that good would be propagated. I really believe that. I think there's definitely evidence of him giving the elixir to certain people, and the elixir of life, by the way, something that he was like, do this and it prolongs your life. And there's stories about certain women taking it for like 20 years and not changing and looking like they're teenagers.
Huh.
I'm on it right now. Do I look 43?
Absolutely not. I was thinking like 24 solid. I mean, just
I get
steady.
carded for alcohol every time I buy alcohol, which is frequently lately. But that's neither here nor there. I don't know, man. I don't think it's outside the realm of possibility that you can take something that like here's why. Because we know for a fact that there are creatures on our planet that don't die. Like, you know, there's a list of these things. They're like jellyfish and all these fucking things. And there's only reasons death happens. It's because things start deteriorating. I'm starting to feel it right now. I have to avoid these fucking readers because your eyes start deteriorating. All of a sudden you start seeing floaters and shit. Things just start wearing out. Well, what if there was like a ultimate oil change lubricant that you could put in, and this was the new synthetic version, and it made your engine go to 100,000 miles instead of 50? Why is that so outside the realm of possibility?
I don't think that it is. I mean, if you think about it, you know, we hear, oh, she, whoever died of old age. Nobody dies of old age. You die of you die of disease and breakdown and, you know, all these different things.
Inflammation.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's the number one fucking thing. If you could have an elixir of life that only cured all systemic inflammation and made your body recognize cancer cells and eliminate them, that's all it would take.
How long could a person live? I mean,
fucking until they got hit by a car or something, eaten by a lion. Like, seriously, trauma would be the only thing that would fuck you up. Somebody stabs you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I do believe that there are people who are doing this right now. They're not, there's not many of them, and they're fucking like monks and shit.
Yeah.
You know,
I don't believe that you're far off with that thought process. I don't think that you are at all. I mean, you know, maybe it was a vampire. I like to keep that in the realm of possibility. Just because.
I want to think of this guy as a contributor to society, though, because when you start reading all the stories about how he was trying to diffuse the French Revolution, about how he went to England and tried to mediate a conflict over there, he went to Russia and tried to mediate a conflict over there. He was cruising around trying to help humanity because he was like, "Look, I'm the oldest motherfucker here. Shut up and listen to me." You want to hear? Let's even take this even further. Let's take this even further. I'll tell you one more crazy story. In 1776, what happened?
Revolutionary
Pretty
War.
Important fucking year.
Well, I mean, you know,
what happened
declared our independence.
In Europe, what happened, everybody likes to talk about also in that exact same year, was the year that Adam Weishaupt revitalized the Illuminati in Germany and called it the Bavarian Illuminati, which was an underground sect we can do another episode on or some fucking future whatever. But like that comes from Sabani Saba and like the Ashmali and the Hashashin, and like you can actually trace the entire history of the Illuminati. But that's neither here nor there. It's definitely known that he was in Germany during that time. It's also known in the same general time period during the Revolutionary War, when Jefferson and Washington were drafting various documents and coming up with the seal of the United States, there are numerous reports of a strange person circulating around these events that matches this description. And there's a very specific historical event where Washington, Jefferson, everybody, all the delegates are trying to come up with the Great Seal. And they're like, what do we include in the Great Seal? And there's two different stories. There's a story that this guy was in the room and he made all these suggestions and every one of the suggestions was followed, but none of the delegates knew who this guy was. And then there's another story about Jefferson and Lincoln leaving and conferring with this guy in a garden nearby and then coming back in and be like, we know what we're going to do. I think it's possible that was the count also.
Wow.
Now go research those individual historical reports and you'll see that this questionable person that nobody knew who they was, this is a very well documented instance. And I mean, is this the hidden hand? I don't know. I also have heard rumor in my esoteric knowledge search that there are a specific number of these individuals at any given time who've been given the legacy of long life through alchemical knowledge. Supposedly there's 13 of them, and they cruise time and history, seeding things and pushing mankind in the direction of whatever it is they think they're trying to achieve. Now there's no way to know what that is, but if they are these incredibly, Like they're basically all powerful because they got the best knowledge and they just kept it to themselves. Like whatever the Egyptians figured out, whatever the Sumerians figured out, why did they have star maps that we couldn't see with telescopes for 2,000 years? Like there has been a secret component of knowledge. What's the most important shit the Vatican knows? There has been a component of knowledge that has been absolutely kept from 99.99999% of humanity, maybe down to just 13 people. And they make appearances throughout history. You start studying history, you start seeing these characters fucking pop up. It's like all those videos of the guy with the cell phone. It's like, I'm not saying this is them, but like it's the same kind of version where you're like, are time travelers real? I don't know. Look at all these black and white videos of people who look like they're fucking talking on cell phones.
I know, that's crazy. That
or have all this
mind.
Crazy tech, you know?
Or the hipster guy standing in the crowd, you know, in like 1940s or 50s or whatever with his, full on hipster outfit, totally against.
Just like things that are not congruent with the average. Extremely incongruent, you know?
Yeah.
Anyway, that story is the 1776 thing. The fact that he might have been with Weishaupt in Germany for that, and at the same time, helping form our country. I mean, those ideas are, I don't know, that's cool to me.
Well, absolutely.
This dude definitely this guy definitely had the money to do it for sure.
Well, yeah. I mean, if he could create his own diamonds out of diamond dust, he's got an infinite wealth at his, disposal.
At no point in this guy's entire career is his wealth ever questioned. He lived in the royal palaces of all the aristocracy. He lived in their palaces.
Yeah.
He was obviously legit.
So going back to what you were just talking about with the founding fathers trying to create the seal and all that. If it's the same guy, a man out of England named Horace Walpole wrote in a letter, 1745, that the Count of Saint Germain had been arrested under suspicion of espionage, but released without charge. That's 1745.
Yeah, that's the same guy. He travels Europe constantly. Let me read you this list of where he goes. He travels constantly. He was definitely arrested in Europe, and that was a false charge, supposedly. He was doing, he was accused of what? Espionage, is that what you said?
Yes.
They thought he was spying because he was going back and forth to France, and they didn't have a good relationship with France at the time. And they're like, yo, you're a French fucking spy. And he was actually attempting to broker a peace deal for some fricassee that Britain was in. And if I don't have the exact history here, but I've read about this event, there's a reason that he was let go. They're like, okay, well, obviously you're not if he was accused of treason, they definitely would have followed through with it if they had evidence.
Yeah, absolutely. Right? Especially in that time.
It's back then. Are you kidding me? They put people in fucking cages and shit. Like, okay, let me read this, his travels. Oh yeah, go ahead.
But it was actually saying, this guy was actually saying, yes, the man spoke Italian, understood some, what was it? Let me look at this. Spoke Italian and French with the greatest facility, though it was evident that neither was his language. He understood Polish and soon learned to understand English and talk it a little, but Spanish or Portuguese seemed to be his natural language.
Whose report is this?
The Walpole. That was Walpole. Same guy.
I have this story here somewhere. Here we go. Let's see. Problem is, there were two Saint Germains in this period, and one of them was getting in trouble with the law a lot. I'm trying to find the story from it. I don't have it marked here.
But if you have a guy,
I mean, if that's the single story in his trajectory that's like, yeah, we arrested him on espionage, it's like, well, that kind of makes sense. But if there was, it's not outside the realm possibility that some guys tried to turn the screws in him, totally possible.
Yeah. And
if you're going to go around being the friends of all the top people, you're going to piss somebody off.
Absolutely. And if you're as charismatic as this guy is, if you're then, even if you do get arrested for this alleged espionage, this guy is going to.
That was 1745, right?
Yes.
Okay, hold on. I found the part. Keep talking. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
But no, you're good. But all I'm saying is, if this is a guy that can take over and control any room that he walks into, I mean, even these people that are picking him up, arresting him, charging him with this or that, I mean, he's gonna, if he's gonna get out of that.
Well, here's the thing, though, man. They cut off the King of France's fucking head.
Well, that's true.
Don't forget that. Like,
that's true.
Like people got whacked
I'll give you that
all the time when they were on the wrong side of history.
I'll give
the Vatican whacked a lot of people. A lot of people were fucking. There were a lot of powered up people. As you study just the Medici, and we're talking about people like assassins trying to stab them to death in church. Like there's a lot of power up peoples that happen. So, man, I really want to find this fucking story. 42. Here we go. Thank you for your patience.
No, you're good, man. You are
Here we
good.
Here we go. Okay, last paragraph. 1746. Okay. The author of the Brussels Gazette tells us that the person who styles himself as the Count of Saint Germain, who lately arrived here from Holland, was born in Italy in 1712. He speaks German and French as fluently as Italian and expresses himself pretty well in English. This sounds like it might be the same report. He has a smattering of all the arts and sciences, is a good chemist, a virtuoso in music, and a very agreeable companion. In 1746, which is actually 1745, according to Walpole, he was on the point of being ruined in England. One who was jealous of him with a lady slipped a letter into his pocket from a young pretender, thanking him for his services and desiring him to continue them, and immediately had him taken up by a messenger. His innocence being fully proven on this examination, he was discharged out of the custody of the messenger and asked to dinner by Lord H, who was Secretary of the Treasury and Treasurer of the Chamber to date. Those who knew him well will be sorry to hear that he has incurred the Christian king's displeasure. So not only did he get released from jail, he immediately goes to dinner with the most important guy in fucking town.
This is the coolest guy in history.
You're arrested upon suspicion of espionage. And
then
the
they
next
slipped a letter in his pocket. Yeah, and then the next day you're like, yo, I'm putting my diamond clothes back on, motherfucker.
And then he's going to dinner in his diamond clothes.
I'm so cool. That's so cool, though. That's cool. I found that. I don't know. Maybe read one more thing. That's about the wood. Let me see if I have so much more. I don't know if you can see this, but I took this super expensive rare book and I completely destroyed it with marginalia. But I do, man. Listen, I don't have these books to not learn from them. So who gives a fuck? Like, let's see. Oh yeah. There's so many. There's also him curing people of weird illnesses.
Really?
Being like, yo, you should stop doing that and do this, or like manipulate their body, or like do some Reiki type shit. It gets so deep. It gets so deep, man. Let's see.
Like a shaman.
Well, you know, what is a shaman? A shaman is a person who goes into the ether and brings back knowledge.
That's true. That is true.
Was it like, you don't think, like, supposedly the entire helix of DNA was thought up while on an acid trip.
Yep.
And Steve Jobs talks at length about most of his, advancement of Apple being thought up on acid. You have to open the valve. Aldous Huxley used to say that the valve of the mind is a constricting valve. And when you take psychedelics, it just gets opened. And I realized this taking cannabis the other day. Cannabis is you ever heard somebody say, what do people say? They want to get high. They want to get, what are the other words for getting stoned? Yeah, what's the other one? There's one that refers to numbing. And I was like, that sounds so like, I don't know. It resonated with me, but at the same time, it obviously doesn't numb all your senses, or people wouldn't do it. Like, what would be the fun in that? Yeah. None of these things numb all your senses. They amplify some of them at the same time. And so what I realized that cannabis does, it numbs your ego, so that all of a sudden the stories you tell yourself about your life they get questioned. And that's why you hear people go, oh, I get paranoid when I smoke. Well, no, man, you're telling yourself a lot of stories that haven't been unraveled, and you need to unravel them. You need to unpack those skeletons in your closet. You need to learn you need to learn your shadow self.
That guy right there.
You got to learn your shadow self. That's shadow self work, right?
Yeah, I told you, I was like, the one thing about it is I take that for that feeling and to be in my own mind sometimes. It like, I don't know how to explain it to people, but my mind goes quiet. It's not like I'm hearing voices. But yeah, you know how they say the silence was deafening? It's the same thing. It's my own mind. It's constantly going like this. But when I take those and then it's time for bedtime and they're peaking and I lay down, I can pick and choose what I want to think, or I can just go to sleep. It doesn't matter. But as crazy as people say it is, I do feel like I wish I would start writing them down, because I do feel like some of my greatest ponderings are when I'm at my highest. Because I don't know, maybe it's one of those deals where, people need a quiet space to study so they can, well, when I'm high and I'm laying in bed, getting ready to go to bed to get up early in the morning, and the only thing I know I have to do is lay there and not move. I'm not worried about anything else. I'm not thinking about anything.
Yeah, it's a kind of freedom so that you're allowed to think the thoughts that your brain generally restricts you from thinking. And so you feel relaxed. You're like, I'm not being judged by my ego. So I can just think them, and it's okay. And no one's going to care ultimately, because no one gives a shit anyway.
No.
That kind of ties back in. That kind of ties back into the Rogan Peterson episode that they just did, talking about the sensory deprivation, and how Peterson was talking about, being in a sensory deprivation tank, and how, it clears away all the external stimuli that forces you or forces distraction upon you, and how it's you and your mind and your thoughts. And when you can find that place, no matter how that is, no matter how or what you do to achieve that, to be able to find that place where it's you and your mind, and you get rid of that ego, and you go with intent, you go with just those different
questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So it kind of, that ties all in together, and it's the same concept there. That's you at your most brain silence, body silence, external stimuli silence. It's you and your thoughts and your mind. And then the possibilities really are endless. That's when we all become philosophers. It's when we get to that point where it's just us and our mind without the external junk.
I mean, Einstein took a job in a census office to do a menial task so that he could later come up with the theory of relativity, which we have found to be flawed. I was just going to talk
about this.
We have found to be flawed, but I mean, still, this guy, he's one of the smartest people who ever lived. That's, hands down. I think
he pushed the ox cart forward. He pushed the ox cart forward, and that's all that matters. It doesn't matter. You don't have to there's no perfection. There's no end to that road, but there's two ways to engage it, and we're articulating it right now. And this relates exactly to why I create electronic music, is because there's two ways to engage this stuff. You can try to sit or walk or however your meditation is and clear the space, or you can intentionally engage the body so that while the body is engaged, just like him taking that job or trail running or exercise, I would argue he should have gotten into instead of fucking computing meaningless bullshit. But if that guy had become, imagine if he had combined, and this is what Brad Miner talks about in his book constantly. I've had terrible mic control, man. I'm sorry. I apologize to the listeners.
You're okay.
You guys are good.
Brad Miner talks about this constantly. You can't just be a warrior. That's not what a gentleman is. It's three things. It's a sacred trinity. This ties right back to everything we've been talking about all night. you have to be a warrior and a monk and a lover, not just of the opposite or whatever you're attracted to, but of humanity, of life, right? You have to be a warrior for all that. You have to be a lover for all that. And you have to be a monk for all that. And so if you're going to create a space for psychological growth, the hardest way is to sit and meditate. I've been trying to do it for 20 years. Everyone, my Buddhist meditation teacher who's 78, Jack Cornfield, he still complains that he has a hard time sitting down to meditate. And he lived in a Buddhist ashram for 7 years when he was in his 20s. Like, it never, ever, ever gets easier. But there are alternatives, and that's why walking meditation is valid. And like sometimes your mind is in that place to digest something wacky and crazy, and sometimes it's not. And sometimes it's more discipline than others. And discipline is a muscle that has to be grown. But what I was going to say was you can also engage the body to keep it busy, like Einstein was doing. And what I do is I put electronic music on, and at a certain point, here's the thing: you have to develop an ear for this kind of stuff, so that you are paying attention to it, but you're not. It's weird. It's there, but it's not there. And what it's doing is occupying your mind space, and the run is occupying your body space. Now, both of those spaces are occupied, and you can sit back with the soul of an observer and pay attention to the things that come in to answer any questions that you have. You know, this is how I get answers to the most important questions in my life. And I recommend it to everybody, even if you don't I don't give a shit if you use my music. Go do something. You know, be active in your life and take this, you know. Why do we study people like Saint Germain or Pythagoras or anyone that we talk about? Because ultimately we're trying to become better people, man. We're trying to become better in this journey. And people sit down and listen to podcasts. Yeah, sometimes it's just, you look at the top 30 podcasts, murder, 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 murder for this, murder for that, fucking murder. Why? People are scared, and it's mostly women, and it's because they're afraid of being murdered. And so it makes perfect sense. But I would make the argument that you don't want to spend your day listening to those podcasts because you're creating a reality around you by doing that. And I really believe this, man. And I'm not saying murder goes away when you stop listening to murder podcasts. I'm not retarded. What I'm saying is, I do believe that you are regenerating every cell in your body, and your entire emotional, energetic resonance will determine how those cells are formed on a genetic level. I was talking about this on my podcast the other day. If we have epigenetics in our DNA that teach us to be afraid of things without having to be taught. You see a snake, everyone's automatically afraid of snakes. You don't have to teach people that. They've done studies with puppies. You know, they've proven epigenetics. If there are negative epigenetics, then there are also positive epigenetics, where the best experiences, the most incredible feelings, the most amazing things that can happen to you can also be imprinted into your genetic code. So your job in this life is to try to fill yourself with as many rapturous, positive experiences that you can, so that you can imprint a better genetic code. You can make a better experience for everyone. And that is my sermon.
I love that. I love that. I really do. I mean, I think it's important, just, you know, and that's what me and Ryan talk about a lot, just with even some of the crazy things that we talk about, you know, some of the things that we discuss, you know, it's a lot of it's fringe, but that's what we find interesting. That's what opens up our minds to the possibilities that are possibly out there. But the thing is, we want to give people a platform. We want to give people an opportunity to share stories, to share life, because that's what we're meant to do, man. We're meant to live life together, not isolated, not in these cages and boxes and, you know, away from each other, or, you know, even right here, even what we're doing right here.
Yeah.
You know, yeah. It's virtual, it's this and that, but we may as well be sitting right here together, you know, in my living room, you know, having this conversation, because the body language is still there. I still see your eyes. I still see the way you're moving. I see how passionate you get when you were just giving your little sermon right there. You know, these things are important. Social interaction, social contact.
Yeah.
being able to come together as people, giving each other the platform to speak about what you're passionate about. I may not agree with you on everything. There's probably not a single person in the world that's going to agree on every single bullet point. But it's important that we come together and have these conversations, have some of the difficult conversations, whatever it may be about. But to be able to have these conversations and to respectfully engage and say, you know what, man, I don't agree with that, but I love you. And we're going to talk about it anyway. It's important for that.
Or how about this? How about sell it to me? I'll jump off any of my ideas. You can really sell it to me. I'll quit any ideas I have. Sell it to me, baby.
Yes. Prove me wrong. Prove yourself right.
But do it cool and graceful and in a way that makes me feel not bad. And I've been really poor at this over the scope of my life. I think we all are until we really choose to polish it. And that's what this really is about. Is like, how do we want to really sell the world to others? Is it by dominating them?
No.
But it all takes work. It all takes work.
Hell yeah.
It all takes, you have to be able to look at these things and to find your weaknesses and to see what you need to work on to be able to do these things, to show that grace, to show that compassion, to show that love. Ultimately, it all takes work, man. And a lot of it in a lot of cases,
psychological gym.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it, man.
But it's a worthy pursuit, though. That's the most important part, is that it is a worthy pursuit. And if you really examine this life, the reason so many people are coming to this conclusion, and the reason that so many people feel inspired to contribute to this conclusion, is because it might be the most worthy experience a human can undertake. And why? Not because it's like a selfish thing where I'm going to make my brain big and like detach from others, but because it does the construction that I mentioned earlier. Knowledge, an accumulation of knowledge becomes wisdom. An accumulation of wisdom becomes compassion, and an accumulation of compassion becomes love.
Yeah.
So don't feel bad becoming intelligent or wise or seeking knowledge or being inquisitive or asking questions. That is the path to love.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. I agree with that. Man, that's powerful. That is powerful stuff.
Guys, this was so much fun, man. Like, I'm really grateful that you had me on. I hope I wasn't too wacky. I'm super grateful to your listeners. And I tell you what, I can tell that your show is going to do well because you guys have the right kind of, like, it's obvious that you're not just passionate. You're doing it for a reason, and it's the right reason.
Yeah, man. Well, I appreciate that. I mean, I really, really do. And again, thank you for coming on here. I mean, I'm glad that our listeners get a little taste of a different face. They don't have to hear from me and Ryan going back and forth with all the banter and it's a good thing. It's a good thing. But we are extremely grateful. You've got an open door here anytime you want to come on, any topic you want to talk about. It's open door policy.
Message us, be like, hey, we need to do this on this time. Like, gotcha.
Hey, let's give a teaser then, because you and I talked about two other topics that did any of that shit like blow your mind? That we had a pretty we almost talked for like an hour on the phone. I think
we did. That's what I was telling Ryan. I was like, dude, look, here's the thing. I said
it was 54 minutes.
54 minutes. Exactly. I said, I talked to this dude, and I said, and Ryan, I'm telling you, I said, he's just one of those guys. And I read people. Like, I'm really good at reading people. I said, he's one of these guys, man. I said, I think the kids nowadays just call it wholesome. I mean, he's just,
it's not though, man. I have so many internal struggles that I'm presenting the best self.
But
I'm just trying to present my best self, man. I'm in the middle of like a terrifying divorce right now. Like but here's the thing. I'm not trying to be, I no longer believe in hiding any components of yourself. And I think that's what social media has taught us to do. And I think that is the wrong thing to do. I think we're supposed to bear our heart on our sleeve. We're supposed to suffer with dignity. And we're supposed to be a whole person, which is the damaged part, the shadow part too, in front of others. Because demonstrating that to others makes them feel okay with being a disaster as well.
And we're all disasters. We are all walking.
Sorry to interject like that, man, but like, I'm not some
dude. I mean, that's what this show's for. We can talk about whatever topic in the world, but that's what this show is about. It's about people coming together, just like I said before, just a minute ago, to live life together. And life sucks. It's miserable. It's a struggle. It's a battle. Every single day, it's a battle. Every single day, you have to wake up with that. All right, let's go get it. I mean,
damn it.
But when everybody realizes that that's how everybody wakes up, then they don't go, dude, am I the only one who wakes up feeling like this is fucking like
exactly?
It's not just a struggle. It seems like it gets harder every day. And the answer is yes, everyone does. And that's okay.
And it's okay.
And you think the social media outlets that we have in place now are bad? If this metaverse thing takes over,
that's a whole different episode, brother.
America, as you know, these generations coming up, and I say it all the time, we've done such a bang up job of raising them that, but I will say this also. I noticed a lot in my kids since they were young till now. And they are better than I can remember me and my friends ever being. Like,
oh my God. Yeah.
Like
I was raised in the woods.
Yeah. And that's the way I grew up. I don't know if you know what a holler is. Yeah. Okay. I grew up way up in the head of a holler, me and my cousins, and it was sun up to sundown. We were in the woods. That's all we did. However, we got into some shit. You know, my kids up here, of course I discipline my children, and taking those phones is like shooting them. But really and truly anymore, I don't have to. They're just good as people. Their mom's done a great job, is what I'm trying to say. But as far as just their generation, some of it's getting out of hand. But this metaverse
it's way out of hand, man.
This metaverse thing, I mean, these people are going to have the personalities of dead moths. It's going to be like interacting with a wall, basically, because how are they supposed to?
I think it's just something we're going to go through. Do you think this is just going to be like a kind of chrysalis that the human condition goes through? And then, like, I honestly think what'll happen is it destroys 80% of the population. And then something like maybe even a solar flare or something, all of a sudden there's no electricity or there's no technology anymore. Or maybe just it all fries itself, or those people just all die off.
The other way I was going to go with this was, we were talking earlier, throughout human history, human sacrifice, some sort of sacrifice. It's kind of funny that something like this would come out in the middle of a pandemic when people are having to stay home and do all this. And then, hey, I can just log in. I can be whoever I want to be. That's how people will know me. Why do I need to go out and be a productive member of society? Also, isn't it funny in your pandemic how your energy prices of vehicle, prices of fuel for your car are all skyrocketing? And when the price of energy goes up, who goes down? It's not middle class. It's not upper class. It's poor families that are barely heating their houses anyway. It is when these people go, it is a form of human sacrifice. I don't know if anybody remembers it or not. I remember it clear as a bell, because I remember thinking, what the fuck did he just say? Obama was giving a speech, who is one of the greatest speakers in our history. I got to give the man that.
He's a hypnotist.
Yeah. But he was talking about the overpopulation of Earth. We've had less natural disasters and mass shootings and things like this. And I'm like, did anybody just listen to what the fuck he said? Like, this is why this is happening, because there's an overpopulation of Earth. And behind the scene from Trayvon Martin and that going on, he opened free trade with Cuba, by the way, third world nations. So your prescriptions you were relying on were coming from Indonesia somewhere, made in a little hut, you know. I try to stay, I question, you can ask Justin, I question everything. It's, I need to know facts, and don't come at me with your crazy. I need to know facts, man. That's like I try. Justin hits me with the crazy all the time.
But that's my job. My sole job in this relationship that we have going here is to hit you with as much crazy as possible to open all that up. Face. You got to open all that up, man. But no, you're right. We need to question everything. Why not? Why shouldn't we question everything? We should see the cold, hard facts in everything and know and realize what's going on around us, not what your television says or what's popping up on your phone or what so says your mom, dad, grandparents, aunts. I mean, it's not about all that. Open your eyes, look around, see for yourself what's going on. I mean, that's, we can't.
How fucking crazy is it that we have to tell people that?
It's insane. It is insane.
It's not a coincidence, though. It's not insane. It's happened on purpose. It's because planned. From the cradle, you're put in cages. You're, I mean, like, this isn't a mistake, but like, listen, if you study, I was talking to Nick about this the other day, Nick Hinton. If you study the Mongol Empire, that's the exact same kind of mentality as what's happening now. They're just not using fucking horses and swords.
Yeah. They don't have to.
Yeah, and if you can put yourself in your own mental prison through guilt, how brilliant! Hey, don't you want to save other people's lives? I mean, we're in our own guilt prison now. But like, this is the thing: talking with each other like this, that's what breaks us out. And honestly, unfortunately, it does put us in danger. And I don't like talking about this a lot, but I've had friends in this industry and everything. Weird things have happened to them, and this is a war. Guess what? It's gonna be casualties on both sides. Yep. And I don't want any casualties, but I didn't want war either. No. And we're gonna have to do what we have to do. Like, look at what's happening in Canada right now. Is that trucker convoy still heading to Alberta?
I think they made it.
What happened when that played out? I didn't get to watch
I know they made it to Ottawa. Trudeau, well, he was exposed.
Did they like evacuate him or something?
He fled. He fled the country. Went to a
you fled the country?
Yeah.
Listen, this is world history unfolding right in front of us, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's hysterical. I'm in charge of this country. I'm out of here.
Yeah.
And he's at Ryan Reynolds' house in Hollywood.
He just happened.
God, I'd love to be at Ryan Reynolds' house. I bet that's a good time. He's actually friends with one of my friends. But shout out to Johnny Love, production designer.
But no, dude, yeah, he fled the country, he's pretending like he has COVID right now, so he has to isolate and quarantine and all this stuff.
Yeah, but hold on, man. You know what the problem is with all this? Nobody spanks these kids, and I don't believe in corporal punishment. But what I mean is, like, no one's gonna call him out for leaving his own country.
Nope.
No.
Nobody. Nobody with.
There's no police.
Exactly.
Well, the police that would be in power are the ones who happen to agree with his agenda as well. So,
well, he made the rules with them, and so they're like, they made the rules together. And it's like, when I was a little boy, I used to do this shit to my brother constantly because I was a terrible older brother. I wasn't always terrible, but be like, okay, here's the game. I made the rules, and they're set up so that you're fucked. Now go. I'm just gonna throw rocks at you or something. Like, good luck. That's what's happening on a grand scale on the planet. It's so fucking pathetic. But man, I could go on forever with you guys. I don't know how much.
I could see. We'll wrap this up.
I'm having fun, man. Ultimately, you know what though? These things are about. They're not trying to force. This is what I've learned about podcasting in the last 20 years. Your ego is the thing that's trying to force something to come up and be right here. And what a podcast, as true entertainment, is supposed to be, is an uncovering of knowledge, which we've already tied to the heart. As long as we keep doing those things, there's people working in their yard, There's people cutting wood. There's people doing what I do every day up here in the mountains, you know, and all day long I have my headphones in and I just want to connect with another human being and maybe get some cool facts and learn some new shit about this existence, or maybe have some new ideas to think about. But even when we're just bullshitting and saying silly things, I'm still chopping wood. So I don't give a shit. Yeah. And that's why long form podcasting has become such an amazing thing, is because all these media outlets that were like, no, we need to cut out all that content. We cut the fat, trim the fat, dude, get just the good shit. Well, that's how we turned into social media. We need to come back to a point in our life where we appreciate the fat again. We appreciate the gristle. You don't necessarily have to eat the gristle. I don't mind if you pop ahead 15 seconds, see what the fuck's going down. But like, eventually you will come to a point where you realize that gristle is making gristle in your body too, psychologically speaking. And so like, just honor all of it. Anyway, I keep doing this. I'm sorry.
No, man, that was great.
We're the same way, man. It'll happen.
No, I'm saying that I'm excited that you guys are entering this journey, because I think you're the right, you know, you definitely have the right temperament for it, and you pick amazing guests. No,
that's exactly right. That is exactly right.
Zing-a-roo. Nah,
truest thing you said this whole time.
I'll tell you what. I'll try to get. I might be able to get Nick Hinton to come your way, and some other people if you want to chat with him.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, do that. I would love to talk with Nick. That would be great.
Yeah. He's in a weird spot. We're all in weird spots right now, so it'll be a piece of art like mine. But he's fun. He's fun to talk to. He's much more positive than me. So.
Hey, I love art.
Nicer.
No, that's great.
Anyway, I love you guys. Thank you for having me on, man. Do you have a name for your audience yet? You know how like Sam calls his audience the swarm?
Dude, I've been racking my brain trying to think. I mean, I would love to tie it into just our culture, you know, because Appalachian culture is unlike any other culture really in the world. So I would love to tie it in, you know, just. So I open up every single episode with folks, you know, which I know folks is used it's used everywhere, but I don't know. We got to think of that, Ryan. We got to think about what to call our audience.
I have another question for you. Oh, I'm sorry, Ryan.
Go ahead.
No, I'm constantly stepping on people, man. It's something I'm terrible about. I really am. I'm curious about, I did want to ask you this question. Nick Hinton actually asked me about this today. He goes, you're going on Appalachian Intelligence? He goes, that's AI. He goes, what does that mean? And I go, I don't know. I'll ask him.
Dude,
like, did you intentionally choose AI?
That's exactly what we did. We wanted to be a play on words, number one.
Okay.
Yeah. Nobody associates intelligence with Appalachia. Or our accents. Like anybody you ever see on TV that has this accent should not talk to anybody, much less be on TV. And that's on the news media. Don't even get me started on Hollywood.
Listen, bro, really I spent 8 months living with the Robertsons working on Duck Dynasty. Okay, you're preaching to the choir.
That's awesome.
But at the same time, those guys were beautiful people. They're just products of their environment.
Yeah.
You know, they went out of control and said some crazy shit they shouldn't have at certain points, mostly Phil. But Phil's been I can't actually talk about much of this because of NDAs I've signed. But what I do want to say is that I think the Robertsons are fucking awesome people, man. They reminded me from my family in the south of Texas.
Yeah.
And, but the AI thing, like, tell me about that, though.
We talked about.
What do you mean? Like, what about the artificial intelligence part? Like the robot part, like the part that ties into Nick, for example, is obsessed with the idea that this is all a construction of some grand intelligence that's actually, inside a cube. I'm not gonna speak for him, but I'm giving him a rib right now.
We actually did our play him up. No, we decided to do it, you know, to give the listeners. I mean, they could take it however they wanted to take it. You know, they could take that, you know, Appalachian intelligence part and be like, God, it's Appalachian intelligence. That's a play on words. These guys are idiots. You know, they're retarded. Or, you know, you give it that. I mean, if you want to call out, we're going to be talking about these intelligence agencies. We're going to be talking about how they run and do this and control every part of your life. So why don't we just come out and say, hey, we're going to go head to head with you. You're going to be the Central Intelligence
Damn, you got some
Agency.
fucking balls.
We're going to be the Appalachian
Holy
Intelligence.
shit. You're going toe to toe with the performers, son. You better be fucking careful. God damn.
I know Saint Germain.
Oh. Can I tell you something funny, man? I've been lecturing on this guy for a minute, and I've actually had people contact me, and I'm kind of scared to reply. And they're like, I know who the current Saint Germain is, or I know the current Saint Germain. You're gonna start getting weird fucking emails, man.
Dude,
And not just because
wait.
of this podcast. I mean, as you guys go on this journey and you explore more topics and you get more guests and like you start doing this shit, bro, you're essentially, I don't even know how to describe it yet, how to articulate having to speak in front of other people is important, because when you become a teacher, you take intelligence that you've learned and you take it to another level. And I think that's really important. And that it's obvious that that's what you guys are trying to do. And it's just a weird journey. It's fucking weird.
Our main goal when we first started this was we differ on a lot of subjects. We look at a lot of things differently, and yet we don't shun each other or hate each other because we have different opinions. We're able to have this conversation. So we were like, we need to go out. We both I've always wanted to do a YouTube page, didn't know what kind of content I want to do. He's been wanting to do a podcast. So when we got together, like, let's do the podcast, and I'll record the video. I'll throw it on YouTube. You edit the podcast.
Now, Did I bring you guys together on anything on this show?
What's that?
On this one?
Yeah, like, was there anything that you guys talked about previously, or like, did you guys have any preconceived ideas about Saint Germain that maybe I brought you guys together on?
Well, it's, the hundreds of years old is, I don't know. It's, I'm not gonna say it didn't happen. I can't prove that. I'm only 39 years old, so I don't know that. But a wee speck.
Well, we can at least all agree that this person existed.
Yeah,
he's not fake. He's not
Absolutely.
fake.
Well, I mean, we have
and that he was extraordinary because we have all of his art.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. We can at least agree on that.
I think
this guy was fucking so crazy unique that he's like one of the exemplary human beings that maybe has ever existed. I mean, he doesn't even have to live forever. I don't know anybody who's pulled off the things that this guy, none of the things that we're debating he did,
No. I mean, we're definitely together on that one. This is one of the most interesting men that
extraordinary
has ever graced this earth. I mean,
dude, the guy was. And then, like, it's a couple hundred years ago. So we're like, well, how much is like telephone game? But that's fine. But it doesn't matter. These things enter the collective unconscious. They become archetypes. We should study them because we do have to have a goal to focus on. Otherwise, we're just a ship in the dark, in the night, in the sea. We have to be we have to have a course. And these guys give us so much inspiration. I don't know about you guys, man. I obviously get fired up by these fucking kooks because I just get like a boner for the idea that like the world is our oyster, and like what if it is possible to become a philosopher king? Like why is it a delusion of grandeur? Why isn't that a dream of every child?
Yeah, it should be. It should be.
It's not unachievable. I mean, what would we have called Hawking had we lived in that time? What would we have called Einstein had we lived in that? What would Elon Musk and all these Neil deGrasse Tyson, my favorite astrophysicist? I love that guy. But what would we be calling them? Philosophy.
We'll have to go 200 years from now to know. I think, 200 years from now, we'll probably look back. Some of these motherfuckers will be in the books.
Oh yeah,
Alex Jones will be in some book.
He'll definitely be in a book.
Well, hell, Tyson took down Pluto.
Right.
All right, guys.
Well, hey, man, I love you guys. This was awesome, and thank you very much for having me. This is great.
Absolutely. We will definitely do it again. We'll be in contact, man. Like I said, open door policy. We love you. We love everything you stand for. Thanks for coming on, and we'll definitely do this again. Can
I shout out my website real quick?
Absolutely. Plug whatever you want to plug.
I don't do a lot of these. Like, okay, unfortunately, there's copies of me on social media. I can't delete these things, so please don't subscribe to them. Please don't follow them. I think they still may be posting on my behalf. I don't know, but I'm not on any social media other than my website, maverickmathews.com. Yeah, there's t-shirts you can buy there that say biologically sovereign. There's music you can buy there that's 50 cents for 20 minutes of electronica. I'm trying to make a contribution. I have a son, and so I really appreciate any love that y'all can throw me. But honestly, you don't have to send me a fucking dime. The biggest contribution you can make is with your attention, and I'm super grateful for that. So thank you.
All right, man.
That's great, man. That's great. You guys go check this guy out. Go check out his work. Go check out what he does, because I'm telling you, it is a wonderful trip.
It's a trip for sure. I love you guys. This is great.
Love you, man.
Thank you for coming on again, man. It's great meeting you. Look forward to the next one.
And Meat Space. We're gonna do it in human version, man. We're gonna get together in Meat Space.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
I hate to linger in this and stretch it out, but like that is the ultimate goal. These Zooms and things are fun, but like we have to build a tribe again.
Yeah.
We all know that.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, guys. Until next time, we'll see you guys later.